Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's Horse Ankles. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys haven't seen my first video in which I introduce myself and just lay out my plans and intentions for this channel and my future videos, I highly recommend that you go check that out. And of course, I appreciate your time. Today's video is going to be about my experience, my story, my narrative as to how I came to be a targeted individual. There is certainly a lot of ground to cover. My experience as a targeted individual has not ended yet, and I'm not sure if it ever will. I think that's the biggest question, or one of the biggest questions that all TIs have is this forever, or does it end? And I sure hope it ends for myself and all of you out there as well. There's a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to attempt to be as concise as I can and stick to relevant highlights in my story. And I guess, like, on a similar note, if there are any subjects or topics that I don't really elaborate on or expand upon as I share this narrative, it is mainly for the sake of time and in recognition of people's attention spans in the age of the internet. So I'm trying to be both cognizant of that and respect that as well. I'm new to making videos, and I will try to make them digestible, even though, despite the subject matter here. So I guess without further ado, I'll just jump right into it. So in the fall of 2010, which was my first semester in my first year of college, through one of my best friends who was attending a different state university in Massachusetts that was not my own, through this close friend whom I grew up with in the same hometown. It was through him that I met a young woman who, and I believe the first time that I met her, I'm pretty sure that party was, it was celebrating her birthday. And that was the first time I met her. And it just felt like love at first sight. Young, dumb, and in love. I found her to be very beautiful young woman, and as I got to know her, and as I got to know more about her, I think what really captivated me was how funny and witty and how smart she was. And also, I think it was the first time I encountered this quality in a girl before at this time in my life, but she was completely comfortable being one of the guys, so to speak. She was everyone's friend before anything else. And I I will also say that in this period of my life, and I guess it's a quality that, for better or for worse, I've always had to some degree. But like, I would describe myself as, as a fairly like prudent person. I was never all about like chasing girls and having one night stands and all of those things that men in society are told, directly or indirectly. That's what men do. That's a measure of manhood. I was a fairly prudent person, and for me, I valued my friendships and social relationships a lot more. I was always a, not quite the class clown, but my sense of humor was my best quality, and I was always sort of a jester of sorts. So, um, like meeting this woman and being captivated by her, and really being infatuated by her. I essentially became her stalker, um, or creeper, whatever. And it was hard for me to find the courage um, to tell her directly how I felt about her. And um, getting back on the main story here, uh, the close friend that I met this woman through, um, that close friend passed away in October of 2012 when he was 20 years old. Um, it came as quite a shock to everybody. He had his whole life ahead of him. Um, Really gifted, super intelligent um, individual, and was taken too soon. And what what took him from us was, he had contracted mono and had checked himself into a hospital, and the doctors, the nurses, excuse me, the staff there, administered medicine, drugs, and they did not keep him under supervision, under watch. He was dismissed from the hospital, and he passed away in his sleep. So we lost him too soon. Um, you know, this hit everyone pretty hard, um, understandably. And again, he passed in October of 2012. And I want to say that it was in the either the late spring or summer of 2013. My friends, to include my hometown friends who had known him, and his friends from the university that he was attending. All of us, we were gathered around his grave at the cemetery in which he was buried, and we were all there to see each other, to support each other, to pay our respects to him. And I I was also thinking at the time that this was a potential chance tell this young woman how I really felt about her, because I felt as though I was truly in love with her. And I never quite got that chance. Not necessarily because I was having difficulty with my confidence, and fear of rejection and stuff like that. But what really struck me out of the blue, when we were all there, was that she told everyone, all of her friends, everyone there, that she was dropping out of the same state university that my deceased friend was attending. She was dropping out of that school, and she was moving to Europe. And I just remember feeling as though I'll never get my chance. She's going to be the one who gets away. There's no way I can realistically just drop everything and go chase after chase her in Europe and stuff, being like a broke college kid. And also we were all dealing with our friend's passing at the time. It was still very fresh, and we were dealing with that loss at a very young age, which it took me a long time to recognize, the effect that had on my life at that time. And the romantic, I'll call it the romantic jousting between me and her, which was sometimes cryptic, sometimes not cryptic, that continued. And what really struck me, what really like weirded me out, was that like in some of her, at the time, like some of her Instagram posts and some of her Twitter posts were about things that she would have no other way of knowing if she hadn't like hacked into my computer and saw the type of pornography that I was watching. And it was very strange. And I at the time, and I continued to believe this for quite a while, this to me was some sort of sign that that she liked me. It validated my my delusional belief that there was some kind of real emotion, there was real, authentic, genuine, love. So I was just like, wow, like how she must be very smart. I mean, like I already knew she was smart. That's one of the reasons why I liked her. But I was like, okay, like she must know a lot about computers if she's somehow hacking into my computer and seeing, what sexually interests me and stuff. And, like there were also some things that she would post, again, sometimes cryptically, sometimes not, on her social media, like things that were never shared with her, but were accurate or true or in the ballpark. And that was just very strange. So it continued for a while, and it took me a very long time to process and make it through, um, like the many stages of grieving, especially losing someone that close and that young. I had taken some time off from attending university. It took me a while to get my bachelor's degree, because I took like 3 years off just to work, because I knew that, um, like, if I was still in school, my grades would be affected, because I was still effectively depressed and still going through that grief. But that romantic jousting, those direct and indirect um, social media posts and cryptic and not so cryptic messages and signals, that had gone on for a long time. And at one point, um, in in my grieving process, I incorrectly and, um, you know, much easier for me to say, like, in retrospect, but I really do regret um, how I dealt with some of it. Um, Mainly in the sense that, instead of like, there was a long while where, after my friend's passing, I felt as though that I was acting as like a mother hen of sorts. I was acting as a good friend, just being there for everyone else while neglecting myself. But um, the opposite ended up happening later. I ended up just kind of clamming up, and I isolated myself to a certain degree. Um, and I had cut out some of my close mutual friends, um, and like, I really just don't have a good reason for it. Whether it was because I was feeling like bitter or jealous. I was somehow telling myself that there were some people that were a bad influence to me. This young woman was one of those people that I had attempted to cut out from my life, and that did not work, because um, I still tried to keep up with her life on social media, and I was still getting I was still getting cryptic and not so cryptic posts and messages um, back my way, um, as if I was being like strung along. That this was not someone who I could just walk away from, um, especially without saying anything to them. Um, and um, I also noticed that um, I also noticed a few things. Number one, in my workplace, um, I would have like these random people, these random strangers, come up to me, and customers, and they would get really close to me. They would look me directly in the eye, and they would be speaking like cryptically or something to me about something that I was apparently supposed to know about or something. And it was usually in a intimidating manner, as if they were trying to instill some kind of fear in me. And I mean, like, the first thing that I thought of, like, after I reflected on each one, I was like, I wonder if this has anything to do with me effectively, like, shutting out that girl that I had become so infatuated with. And I, fast forwarding a little bit in time, I had finally finished my bachelor's degree in political science. Like, my friend's passing had delayed that. And not that that's like a race. I learned that a lot of things in life are really just not a race and competition. It is your own life. But regardless, I finished something that I set out to complete. I had some closure on that, and I knew that I wanted to do something with my life. I am a very service-oriented person. Ever since I was a little kid, I remember being interested in military stuff, in American history. So I was thinking about joining the military, and I was also thinking about applying to the Central Intelligence Agency, which sounds very intimidating, right? Because apparently, like, getting a job at CIA, I mean, like, that's got to be like harder than getting into like an Ivy League school like Harvard or something, right? And so I finished my degree in December of 2019, and 2020 starts, and that is the year of COVID, which we all know. COVID is now one of, like, the measurements in time in our society and culture. When COVID hit, but COVID happened in 2020. I was still working where I was working at the time, and I started talking to an Army recruiter, and I started preparing an application for CIA at the same time. And this wasn't just because COVID was going on. It was also because it had taken me so long to finally finish my college degree. Which, I mean, like, I don't regret, because I had a ton of great life experiences in that time who shaped me. So, but I felt as though I was overdue in getting out into the world. So whichever one I heard back from first, I was going to do. Because at this point, like, in my life, I was 28 years old in 2020, and I had never really left my my hometown. Like, I had traveled a lot, but I mean, like, I was more or less, like, stuck in my hometown. It was one of the only ways I was able to afford going to school as well. But regardless, submitted my application to CIA, and that position was for an operations officer. I submitted that application in April of 2020. And I was also progressing with meeting with my active duty Army recruiter. Some very strange things started to happen that year. Um, Outside of my home, there would be like, and I live in a or I did live in a quiet neighborhood, small neighborhood, and like there would be like sketchy cars like parked outside um, of our house at night. Um, the the messages, the social media posts um, that I was receiving that were either easy to find um, or were found through just using some simple OSINT, which is open source intelligence. Um, finding things through OSINT, all related to this woman that I still couldn't get out of my mind. Things just got they just got stranger. And everything started, somewhat sporadically. It started very light, I guess. And, fast forward, I end up signing a contract to enlist in the Army for the 35 Fox MOS, which is an all source intel analyst. I was telling myself that at the time, like I definitely like wanted to serve in the military before I got too old. That's what I was telling myself, and I understood that I could potentially use that, both that experience and that MOS, which is job in the Army, as a stepping stone to CIA. And I ended up signing the contract. I took my oath. I enlisted. When I was making the connecting flight to my final destination, where my basic training was, there were these two guys who walked into the gate area where me and the other recruits were waiting, seated, and they sat down practically right across from me, and they started having a conversation. They looked at each other, and they were basically like, oh, she's married now, it's time to move on, you got to move on. And they were, of course, referencing that woman who had gotten married that same year on July 4th. And I was just kind of like, I felt fear. I mean, like there were already sketchy things happening in my life, and there combine this also with social media posts that that this woman was sending my way, wanting me to see it. Going back to like 2013, and before that, things that she only could have known if she had like literally like hacked my computer, because a lot of it was referencing like what I'm interested in sexually, like the type of pornography that I watch. Funny story about that too. Um, there there were pornographic videos made um, that used doppelgangers of this young woman. They looked very much like her. Um, could pass as her. Um, and I've been sure to document that. Um, so I mean, like, I think we can all see that that this just has like honeypot like written all over it, and at the time, because even in 2020 when I enlisted in the army in September and had applied to CIA in April, both in that year. I mean, like, this stuff goes back to when I first met this girl, and I I like I felt as though like it was love at first sight. It was hard to avoid. I felt as though it was hard to avoid this woman because of the amount of social media attention that I was directly and indirectly getting from her. I mean, like, that should have been like a red flag of some kind, because um like, I was quite a shy person. Like, um she didn't really know a lot about me from talking directly with me or anything like that. It it seemed to all come from cyber means. But to me, like, as I was going through it for those first, that was 2020. So for the first, let's call it, uh, like 10 years, um, I just felt as though that, this girl is the one who got away. Um, I kept telling myself, especially like at those ages, that I was telling myself that what I was feeling was real love, was real genuine love. When in reality, it was infatuation. Not only was it infatuation, but um, it was all designed with a purpose. It was a honeypot op. Um, I mean, like, to just like the sheer amount of messaging, um, the amount of accounts that were being used, the fact that pornographic videos were being made using doppelgangers, um, like all of her like online mentions of things that I had never shared, or things that I kept very private. Um, I mean, like, I didn't put two and two together. Like, that, I didn't figure that she was a spy, or anything like that. Firstly, because one of the requirements on their website, uh, a stated requirement on CIA's website, is that for most, if not all, positions, you need at least a bachelor's degree. This started when we were 18 years old. Um, so what I think happened was, I think that the first time that she went to study abroad before she dropped out of that university, I think that the first time she studied abroad is when she was recruited as a non-official cover, case officer, and for whatever reason, she spotted and assessed me, um, And I think that, you know, easier to say in retrospect, and I'm also trying to put aside like my past bias, which was my emotional feelings towards her. Now recognizing that all of that was artificial. Um, it doesn't feel good to be honeypotted. Um, but I mean, like I think that the first time that she studied abroad in Europe while still a student at that university, I think that is when she was recruited as a non-official cover case officer, or at least um, a trainee to be one, because we're talking 18, 19 years old. Um, and I also think that I also think that she was either directed or encouraged, or both, to honeypot me. Um, you know, that is I mean, like, that's one of the staples of being a spy, is being able to um, spot, assess, recruit um, assets. So, I mean, I it's crazy to talk about this out loud, by the way. So please excuse, you know, this as I really talk about it for the first time on YouTube, like, to the entire world. So I think that she was directed or encouraged to honeypot me, to recruit me. There, I'll save some of this other stuff for future videos, but I can definitely expand and elaborate on a ton of recruitment methods, messaging that I was seeing, um, coordination and curation of all sorts of things in my life that at the time, um, I at least like made a note of, but for all intents and purposes, it just went right over my head. Um, Everything's easier to talk about in retrospect, all these years later. But I can definitely talk more about those things in the future. But this video is already extremely long. I apologize. Um, so I was still getting types of messages and stuff like that from her, despite her being on a different continent, despite her being in relationships with other people. Um, I was her target. I was her stalker, her creeper. It was very hard to let go of the idea of her, because I was getting pinged so much, so to speak. To bring it back, I encounter those gentlemen at the gate on my connecting flight to basic training. Um, the next little bit over 4 years of me being in the Army were some of the best, if not the best, years of my life so far. I had an amazing experience. I loved every minute of it. Lots of stories to tell there. But one thing that didn't go away, that was consistent, even while I was in the military, was the gangstalking, was the encounters that I was having, um, and these bumps, um, which is what they're called, and on nearly every single commercial flight that I took, whether it was on a Army TDY, which is essentially an Army business trip, where you're going somewhere for an exercise or for training. It didn't matter if that flight was business, so to speak, for Army stuff, or if it was recreation, if it was me flying home to see my family on leave every Christmas, which I was very lucky um, to have had that leave approved every time. Others are not so lucky. But every flight, every single one, what would happen was, even before I got on the actual flight, my and this is where I start to see the overlap with other targeted individuals, especially with the gang stalking stuff, because every single time I went to an airport, every single time I was on a flight, I would have these strangers, these individuals that I didn't know, all different walks of life. Sometimes they were, by themselves, or posing as a couple, posing as a family, involving their children, which blows my mind, is how, how families and children are used in gang stalking. It's disgusting. But anyways, I would have these strange individuals be seated near me, or they would come sit next to me or across from me. The key is within earshot of me. And they would always have a conversation. If they were by themselves, it would be a fake phone conversation. Or if they were at least a party of two, they would be having a conversation with each other. And what they were discussing, without saying my name or anything, of course, because they're strangers, right? They would discuss things that were pertinent to me, things that no stranger should know. No stranger should know about me. Especially, well, yeah, some strangers at the airport talking about recent activities that I've done, recent things that I've said, recent life events, the type of, again, like the type of pornography that I watch, past drug and alcohol use, like all of these things that a stranger off the street should not know, but did, and always within earshot, always making pertinent comments. 99% of the time, it was derogatory. It was defamation. It was insulting. It was mean. It was belittling. It was negative. It was very negative. And keep in mind, like, I had experienced this before, I enlisted in the Army. Given the span of the 16 years, I'll gladly elaborate on on, you know, TTPs and tactics of gang stalking, because it's super easy to call out. And what I noticed, and what came to be for me a 100% guarantee that I was going to get, you know, gang stalked and, you know, get bumped, to be harassed, is that when I would be on the flight, when I would board the plane, these gang stalkers would always be seated directly in front of me, directly behind me, directly to my side, all within a certain, the ones that had to do the talking, excuse me, would be seated in a certain proximity. And you know, I will say, to my utter embarrassment, but at the time I was following my own interpretation and understanding that, you know, I was still like romantically captivated by this woman. I was, to a certain degree, if not completely, just delusional about the assumption, interpretation, or understanding that, like, there was some kind of real connection between us, that it was some unique relationship that was hard to put a label on. And, you know, like, as these things were happening to me, I didn't confront them. I didn't say anything about it. I didn't tell anyone about it. I just kept mental notes on it, and I would actively listen, with every intention of absorbing all of that dialogue that was being directed at me, so I could try to understand it, so I could analyze it, so I could collect intelligence on it. And, you know, in this admittedly, you know, delusional romantic thinking that I held for so long, not recognizing this just for a honeypot, is that I was telling myself that that the gang stalkers, these are, you know, these must be like private investigators that she hired, because she's upset with me that I cut her out of my life, and, you know, this is like some sort of like revenge. This is also a way for her to bring me back more into her orbit, to keep my attention captivated. And I still obviously wasn't putting two and two together. I was telling myself that these were private investigators. They would also make mention to her. I mean, those two gentlemen at the gate, on my connecting flight, boarding my connecting flight to basic training, talking about her being recently married. Hey, you need to move on. It's time. But she would get mentioned. Not every time, but enough for my mind to associate her with the gang stalkers, and I kept telling myself that these are like her private investigators, because like we're in, you know, still in some type of love or something like that. And, you know, the fact that the vast, when the gang stalking like really picked up steam, in my life, it was um, it was always in the airport and on board those flights. And it's the perfect environment for a gang stalker, because at an airport, once you're past security, if you want to leave, you have to go through security again. So once you're at the airport, you're essentially at the airport. And when it comes to a flight, I mean, forget about it. Like, you are trapped in an aluminum alloy tube with those people for hours, and you are forced to listen to them. See, for me, I should have recognized then, but I didn't. But I should have recognized that, especially due to the seating arrangements of what gang stalkers were doing the talking, who had their scripts. Due to those seating arrangements and that specific proximity, I mean, like, it's clearly that party, the party of the gang stalkers, is clearly one of the government, because they have access to the manifest of the flight, so they can know where I'm sitting when I book the ticket, and they can plan accordingly and place the gang stalkers that are going to be doing the speaking within earshot of me. But at the time, I was still telling myself, like, these are private investigators, whatever. Like, they must know this from, like, hacking my computer or something like that. Like, I remember going through. I think I went through a couple laptops. I went through a couple phones and phone numbers. I just couldn't seem to shake it, to make it go away. And here's the big one. So we're gonna go to March 2024. I was traveling to. I'm sorry. Before, I must preface this with something else, but they do have one thing in common. There were two Army TDYs, Army business trips, that I took to North Carolina, where I was traveling there to get training in the Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty area, like the Fayetteville, North Carolina area. I was traveling there at the time I was working. I had moved in the skiff to the OSINT cell, to the Open Source Intelligence Cell. So I was going to these TDYs for that particular post, and on one of them, on the flight there, I was traveling with my supervisor, and he was seated away from me. On that flight, there were one, two, three, four. There were, I want to say, four individuals. Two of them were seated directly in front of me, and the other two were seated across from or next to them. I was on the right side of the plane. Those four individuals, I had never experienced such toxic and mean harassment, like, right to my face, basically. on this flight for the entirety of the flight. They were just being awful human beings, and saying things that were pertinent to me the entire time. It wasn't directed at anyone else. Like, I recognized it for what it was. And like, they of course like had mentioned recent things that had happened in my life, recent places that I went to. They referenced, and the woman came up again because they messaged they spoke about a direct message that I sent to her, because at this point in time, all those years later, I had taken it upon myself to reach out to those people that I excommunicated, her included, and I apologized for my behavior, and I essentially said, like, look, I'm not looking for your forgiveness. I'm just looking for your understanding. This is what I was going through at the time. This was my rationale at the time. It was wrong. I'm sorry. They talked about that, and those were all private DMs on. It's when I still had on Facebook. And they were just super mean. And what's important here, I think, is that at this point, I'm in the Army. I'm an intelligence analyst. I hold a top secret TS-SCI clearance that's necessary to do my job. I work in a skiff every day, making intelligence products for the command staff. And, like, at this point, like, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I went from trying to be a little bit dismissive and trying to gather more information and context and try to figure out, like, who these people actually were, because they were American nationals. At this point, I just felt as though, not only was I angry and upset because of how mean and intrusive this was, but simply put, like, this was an OPSEC issue. This was an operational security issue, one that I felt obligated to report, and I did. So when I got off the flight, I told my supervisor. He was a higher ranking non-commissioned officer, NCO. I told him about it, and I followed protocol, and I contacted Army counterintelligence, both the chief warrant officer at my unit, who handles counterintelligence. I spoke to him, and I also spoke to Army CI at Fort Bragg as well. Just described what happened, and I was also instructed by the Army CI personnel, the ones at Fort Bragg. They had recommended that I report this to the FBI. There was an FBI sorry, I'm having a brain fart. Field station. There was an FBI office for me to report this incident, and I went. I think it was the next day or 2 days later, because I had to contact them they gave me a time to show up at their office for someone to let me in. And the day that I went to the FBI to report this, I was ushered into the office by a female FBI agent, and we went into a room. They closed the door behind them, and I was sat at a table with two female FBI agents. They asked me what happened. I told them about that encounter, everything that was said. I gave them descriptions of the people. I mentioned the past times that I had been experiencing gang stalking and getting bumped on flights. And I also even told them, like, hey, like, I think that this is related to this woman that that I had feelings for. I think they're somehow connected. I don't know if they're private investigators or something like that, because they're mentioning her like enough to have there be a connection. And they wanted me to know that there was a connection. The two female FBI agents, one is taking notes, one is making eye contact with me. We're directly speaking with each other. And I tell her everything. The last thing that she asks me before I leave, because I, came in early in the morning, they opened up the office, and I had to get to the class that I was taking this TDY for in Fayetteville. And the last thing that she asked me was, have you ever applied to an intelligence agency before? And I said yes. That's all I said. Didn't say which one, didn't say when I applied. Nothing. And she just looked at me, and that was pretty much it. Take care, have a good day, whatever. So, yeah. The next TDY that I took to the same place, doing the same type of training, but different courses, but at the same company. This is what I refer to as the intervention that I experienced, that happened to me on this particular TDY. Of course, same thing happens. 100% guarantee. Airport, gate, on the flight. Can't avoid it. Still confused. This is still happening. Why? What is the goal? So, I mean, on this TDY, it is 2 weeks long, and I'm traveling by myself. My supervisor is not with me. The civilian contractor that I work with is not with me. My fellow soldiers are not with me from my section. It is just me on this TDY. I show up for 2 weeks, taking 2 courses, each a week long. And I start, I'm attending these classes, and over time, every single person in those classes, some of the same ones stayed for both classes, like those 2 weeks. Some of them left after the first week. after the first course was complete. Excuse me. And over time, every single person in those classrooms would start saying things that were increasingly pertinent to me. Private things, insulting things, gangstalking. It didn't happen all at once. It was a very slow roll, and this culminated in the end, and this is important in my story, in my experience. And the hotel room that the hotel and the hotel room that that I was staying at for this 2-week duration, some very, very interesting things started happening and happened to me in that hotel room. First of all, I booked the flights. They have the manifest. I booked the hotel. It's very, and I'll elaborate on this in future videos, but I mean, like with access to the, airline manifests, and just making reservations, stuff like that. Like they're able to tamper with and manipulate those reservation systems to enable their operations. It's a common practice in the intelligence field. My hotel room was in terms of security, was in the worst possible place that you could have a hotel room at. It was on the second floor. It was the first room. Right as you get to the top of the stairs, it's the first room. So, anyone who wants to access that hotel room or just mess with you when you're there and when you're not there, they have they're able to utilize that staircase and the door that goes into the parking lot. They're able to use that to just slip away and evade any kind of detection. Terrible hotel room spot for any kind of security. But the most significant thing that happened to me in that hotel room was that I want to say this occurred. This started occurring. So these 2 weeks that I was there in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area attending these courses, these were the last 2 weeks of March 2024. I want to say this was this started happening the last week of March 2024. The stuff that started to go on in the hotel room, where this intervention ended up, culminating. But I started hearing what to me, I started hearing voices in what sounded to be the hotel room next to me, from the hotel room across from me. I even was hearing what sounded like people speaking in a mumbled tone, like it was through a wall. I even heard this directionally coming from the ceiling, and I'm on the second floor in a 2-story hotel. There's no one on the roof. There's no room above me. And I'm just kind of like, all right, well, okay, weird. Over the final few days of that week, these voices that I was hearing, what I thought were originating from the adjacent hotel rooms to me, those voices, they were audibly increasing in their clarity. They were, over time, no longer sounding like muffled or mumbled, like they were coming from behind a wall or a surface of some kind. And I really started freaking out when I got up one morning to get ready in the bathroom. I took a shower, and I was standing over the bathroom sink. I was splashing water in my face with a face cloth, brushing my teeth. I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I hear a voice, clear as day, say to me, I'm trying to think of exactly what it was. Let's see if I can get this verbatim. It was something to the effect of, like I have to listen to his gag reflex every morning when he brushes his teeth. And I was so confused and shocked, and I just felt I felt so violated. So violated. I didn't know what it was. I in those last few days, on the TDY, these voices that I was hearing, they were also increasingly like speaking directly to me, and I will admit that, like, at that time I was speaking like out loud, like trying to address and answer these voices, because I thought it was someone like in the hotel room, adjacent to me. And like at first, like they didn't identify themselves. Like it was just very strange. I didn't know what was going on. I kind of figured, like, okay, this is like maybe this is like CIA, like for real. On the last day of the TDY, we're taking our final exams in the class. When you finish your final exam, you're free to leave. As each person who finishes their final exam, each person, as they finish, as they're exiting, as they're leaving the room, they turn around and they make a general, like announcement to the class, like before saying bye. And all of those comments were about me. All of them. And what was also strange is that on the last day, some of the discussions in the classroom that we were having, there was one person there. There was one student who when she was asked, like, what unit are you in? Because all of us there were military personnel, or were supposed to be. And all of our units had to sponsor us to send us to this course at this company. And this girl, this woman, when she was asked, like in the first week, like, oh, like what unit are you from? Like, where are you stationed? Like, she did not have her stuff together. She basically like relied on another individual in the class to like pick up her answer and not blow her cover, because she was not military personnel. What she was, God honest truth, she was a doppelganger, looked very much like this, the woman that I was infatuated with. And her name was, the name that she used in the class was Nico. And on the last day of the course, day of the final exams, people are leaving one by one, making comments directed at me, just trying to put me on the spot and embarrass me, basically. Nico, in the class, she's on the last day, she's wearing a t-shirt that references the like the kink or the fetish that I have, sexual reference. And right before we take the final exam, she's having a conversation with one of the teachers, and like I just remember, like I knew almost immediately that like these people were the same type of people that I was encountering on every single flight. What I later came to understand, or call or label as gangstalkers. She was having a conversation before we started the exam with the teacher, and I remember feeling so pissed and so upset. And like I was having, of course, given that emotion, I was having like angry thoughts. And I think that I was I was probably like calling her out or lashing out at her, like internally in my own mind. And in this conversation that she was having with the teacher, like they were both reacting to it live. Like almost verbatim, line for line, like the thoughts that I was having. And I was, it was so much information to take in at once. And of course, like this intervention, this major event, this major operation that happened on this TDY, I mean, like it was totally designed to just I mean, like there was no way that I could avoid it. It encapsulated all of my time there. It was, in fact, all about me. Another interesting thing is that everybody in the class, in the last like 2 days or so, they were all using earpieces. And I just found that very strange. Like at this point, like I knew that like there was something being directed against me. I couldn't call it out loud. Excuse me, I didn't want to do that. Um, it was way too much information to take in, and by training as an analyst, like preferably I would need to be in a different environment, removed from that, to um, reflect and compile and process all of that information, all of that wild stuff. Um, but in retrospect, I know that they were wearing earpieces as cover for the technology that's being used. Um, the technology that was being used in the classroom the amongst the curated students, the co-opted staff at the company that was hosting the course for the TDY. And I also encountered the technology for um, effectively for the first time in that hotel room. It all went down on that TDY. And I'm just looking at the time here, an hour and 21 minutes. Damn, guys. I returned to my duty station after the TDY. And when I got back to when I got home, I there were multiple nights, multiple days in a row. I think it was like 3 or 4 days or something like that. That I was sleep deprived. That I was kept awake. I was interrogated. They asked me all sorts of questions about childhood memories, about traumatic things that had happened to me, about quote unquote like dirt, like things that like could be used to blackmail me or try to blackmail me. And they also like directly told me, I think I'm gonna have to slice and dice this video into some parts. Yeah.